So, good afternoon. My name is Anthony Sequeira, and I'm a program manager for Mobility Pathways and Returns with IOM, based in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I'm delighted here today to be joined by Vatran and Gordan. And this is on the back of the Regional Diaspora Experts Forum, which we've just held here in Pristina. So this has been a really fascinating forum for me, and I think one thing that's really come across is the complexity of diaspora engagement in the context of EU accession or EU alignment, and then the large numbers of emigration from the region to Europe, the labor market shortages, and then the different stages that different authorities are at with regards to engaging the diaspora. It was a really complex discussion. So perhaps what we can do is I'll hand over to you first, Vatran, to introduce yourself, a little bit of background on your work, and perhaps your reflections on what were the most pertinent, fascinating aspects of the forum that you think are most important to take forwards.
Right. So my name is Vatran Marashlyan. I'm Armenian, born in Armenia, but lived almost 30 years abroad. Moved to Armenia in 2010, worked in the government as the Deputy Minister of Diaspora, and now leading an NGO which is focused on the highest and the most difficult way for diaspora's engagement, which is repatriation, physical move. And because I'm wearing these three hats, it's always interesting, to me, not to look only on Armenian case, and we have like more than 1,500 history of having a diaspora all over the world, starting from Argentina and ended up in Australia. We have Armenian communities or Armenian heritage left. But also, it's very important to get out of the Armenian context and to look at what's going on with other nations. And I'm always amazed that by 70, 80%, like all our fears, challenges, aspirations, dreams are very similar. Only 20, 30% are different because of the cultural, historical, other differences. And I'm always looking for these opportunities to meet with people, and this forum was one of that opportunities to share both the good examples of engagement, to talk about challenges, to talk about trust, which is like the most common word used by all diasporas. It doesn't matter, not only the trust, but the lack of trust. Let's call it that way. And I think it's great that you have an opportunity to share, to compare, and to see what might work for each other, because in general, diasporans or people who work with the diaspora are much more open to a dialogue, to learn from each other, and to provide advices to each other. I think this is crucial.
Thank you very much, and I think that's some really salient points over there. Gordan, perhaps I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself, a little bit of your background, and some of the key points that you drew from the forum today.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's such a great honor and pleasure to be here with all of you today. My name is Gordan Jordanov, and I'm working as a United Macedonian Diaspora Director for Macedonia and Europe. Coming from an NGO sector, a not-for-profit organization based out of Washington, D.C. and operating in more than 4 continents, definitely for us, it's a kind of a pleasure to share diaspora thoughts and their needs, take a look at their problems, but also offer solutions. So this forum was very crucial for us to kind of really immerse into the institutional kind of perspective of the engagement between diaspora and their homeland. Say honestly about the trust, building trust mechanisms, as well as, service types of activities that are needed in our countries in the Western Balkans. Western Balkans is a region where diaspora has been immigrating from in the past 100 and 200 and even more years, traveling around the world. And it's very dynamic to understand from a community to a community, from a country to a country, on how it's best to connect the diaspora with its homeland. We, from the non-for-profit sector or organizations, are definitely the voice of the people who lost trust in the government and are trying to offer some advices and solutions to the development processes of the nations from where we come from. So we will serve as a tool, as a bridge between the institutions and the people in the diaspora, or those who are willing emotionally or in other spheres coming back to the country itself. What is very crucial from this conference for us is to see that this region has a common problems and definitely deserves a regional approach to answering those questions or problems that people are really facing up until today. We live in a modern era. Our diaspora is present in developed countries mostly, and they are offering modern life solutions such as digitalization, continuity in the in political spectrum, and for us it's very important the governments to understand that diaspora issues are above any political interests. It's an ideology that countries should understand that diaspora is part of a normal life of a country.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting that you pointed out to the fact that there are regional similarities here, because we often think of diaspora in terms of national level and the national needs, but in fact there are similarities and there are parallels that we can draw that could end up benefiting each other. So I think that's something that really can be explored a lot further. Vatran, coming back to you, you mentioned that you wear three hats or have worn three hats. You've got the perspective as someone who is a diaspora themselves, but also you've worked with governments and institutions, you've been working on national strategies. So from those two perspectives, where do you think the gaps are? Where do you think are the missed opportunities that maybe governments are not doing what they could be doing, or where diaspora perhaps are not offering what they could be offering? Where's the room to bridge that?
I think my colleague has already started mentioning some of them, and I would say the biggest challenge is actually taking the diaspora state relations out of politics for a longer term things, because the priorities for diaspora and the state are like for 20, 30, 50 years, right? And in order to get there, the governments should find the right ways to share political and economic power with the diaspora, to make them co-owner of the state, co-owner of the relations, co-designer of the strategies and policies and programs. If this doesn't happen, diaspora still will be engaged, but on a much lower level. And the more sophisticated, more high impact engagement you want to get, the more sophisticated institutional and communication methods you need to use. So if you want someone just to do remittances, okay, you can do the way you do it, but don't then wait that your diaspora will come with high level expertise to you, or will lobby the interest of your country in a proper way, or will provide good export promotion support to you. So it's basically the deal for the governments is to understand what potentially they might have if they have their diasporas engaged, and what they're ready to, let's call it, sacrifice in order to get there. And EU accession, by the way, is a great cause, because usually diaspora is passionate and very connected with homeland in two cases: when the homeland is in crisis or under the danger, or where there's a very good, interesting, positive agenda about the country. And here EU accession can become really one of the topics where the countries can upscale the level of diaspora's relations and engagement, and this damaged trust issue they can recover through the right approach.
And I think this issue of keeping diaspora or keeping politics out of diaspora engagement is something you touched upon, Gordan, where you were saying sometimes it feels that diaspora just treated as numbers, and you referenced local elections, and I think that was something that really struck a chord with me. So if we look at the issue of EU accession, which you raised, where do you think are the main opportunities, and have you perhaps yet seen any examples of specifically where diaspora have been engaged or could be engaged, particularly to the EU accession process? Do you think that's an opportunity and a gap over there, or do you think that's not something that diaspora will go for from your experience?
Definitely. I mean, this is a great question, and this is a topic that I've been raising in the past couple of years. EU accession process we have seen in the past 30 years that is not going well in this region. We're not there yet, and we're always not there yet. We need to try some new mechanisms. The only available mechanisms with the resources that we have is the knowledge and experience from our diaspora. Somebody that is not asking for something for return. somebody that is willing to contribute to the development process, to see its own home country the same as the host country where they live or they were born. So diaspora should definitely not be seen as a fear, as a threat to country policies or politics in general, but as an advice of what others from different perspectives outside of the bubble that we live in believes that needs to be done inside the country. That doesn't mean that it will be always favorable and positive about the current politics that is in the country itself. However, it will give a notion that their voice has been heard. They have been somehow signalized and recognized by the country, as well as give them a space for a talk, for a discussion, open opportunities for people to tell their experiences and what they believe needs to be done in the country itself. Political parties oftenly divide the diaspora communities, and that is not good for us as a country. That is not good for the communities over there. We need to show the unity. We need to show the long-term goal that diaspora is a vital part of the creation and development process of the country itself. The political reasons can be just dividing the diaspora. So when we speak about diaspora, first of all, they are not part of political engagement, and second of all, they should be not only used for national purposes or patriotic purposes, but realistic purposes. To hear their experience on how is the work done in the international organizations or the government institutions that they are working in, because there are a lot of people from this region working in foreign institutions, foreign international organizations that governments are not knowing. They're unknown to our nations. So learn your diaspora, know their potential, and don't care about their background ideology. Just focus on how they can contribute to your national level and a regional level.
And I guess this is a real challenge because quite often we find that authorities think, as someone mentioned, in 4-year cycles or in 5-year cycles. So it's really trying to encourage and motivate the different actors to think, as you said, with that long-term vision of 20, 30, 40 years. And maybe that's a space where diaspora organizations and international organizations that are non-political have a role to play in advocating for that kind of agenda. Vatran, one of the things that we discussed beforehand was your impressions about not having a holistic approach to how diaspora can contribute, and perhaps sometimes having a very narrow focus maybe on economic or financial aspects. Some of the points raised in today's presentations were talking about not just the economic capital of diaspora, but the human, social, and cultural aspects. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on your perceptions of that and where you think there are missed opportunities to engage?
Right, it's a very good question. So in general, I'm an economist by professional background. If we look at it as an investment process, so it's a two-way road, but also two-way investment. So ideally, the country of origin, the home country, should invest a care and love investment, which is proper cultural, educational opportunities for migrants and then diasporans. In some cases, even security challenges. So if people want to come back to the country for different reasons, they should kind of accept them. And in opposite, they get pride or gratitude investments from the diaspora. So if you don't invest yourself in your kids, in your children, whenever they become famous, you approach to them and ask for a support. Well, children most probably will do something, but it will be completely different from the situation if they got that love when you were a kid.
From the beginning.
Right. So if you look at diaspora's engagement, I mean, they can, unfortunately, many states focus on remittances and benevolent activities, but expect diaspora to be engaged in a much more sophisticated topics like political lobbying outside, increasing exports, or sharing knowledge and transfer. It doesn't work that way. So you also need to upscale your abilities to identify, as my colleague has mentioned, those who are high impact in different institutions, working in business, in public institutions abroad, and then to offer something that they can be engaged. My experience shows that in most cases, when you are looking for more sophisticated type of engagement, you need to go for public-private partnerships. So you need to partner with local organizations, those diaspora organizations, NGOs, those who proved to be successful. And actually, it's even beneficial for the governments to support those organizations to scale up rather than to create something similar, but on a government level. Because in any case, governments have very strong sides, but also typical weak sides. The typical weak sides are they're not flexible enough, they always have staffing issue, they depend on elections a lot, they have capacity issue, they have outreach issue, and many other things. So this is the gap, and these are the weak sides that other institutions can actually compensate through partnerships. But it's also, they're not flexible in terms of budgeting, they're not flexible in terms of attracting professionals from abroad, hiring, whatever. So there are a lot of limitations, right? So, and I see Irish experience, I see Israeli experience. Those two countries are more advanced in many diasporas, not in all, but in many diasporas engagement ways. And when you look at these experiences, a lot of things are in the public-private partnerships. So delegating, even giving implementations to the diaspora of the programs that are designed for the diaspora is a key. And attracting repatriates, those who return back to the country, as the natural bridge between the country and diaspora is also extremely crucial. If you have anybody that works with the diaspora as a state institution, from my belief, at least 50% of those who work there should be former diasporans who are now returnees, because they are the trust builders. They are the people who actually understand both the diaspora with its emotional ups and downs, but also are long enough in the country itself and understand how the country works.
Interesting. So I think this is potentially what we could consider some sort of almost like an innovative approach, a sort of a new way of thinking about how we engage with diaspora. And I'm wondering to what degree you would agree with that, and do you think perhaps looking at and leveraging the private sector is a way to maybe take politics out of the diaspora engagement? And is that something that you think national authorities and private sectors would be willing to work together and collaborate on this new way of engagement and this sort of outsourcing?
I think I totally agree with what Vatran said, because it's not only about economy benefits, it's about knowledge. And when you have these public-private partnerships, it's about the knowledge to stay within the state. And that is something the diaspora can bring. It's a two-way process. I completely agree with the expatriates who came back to the country, that they are the bridge, and they need to be somehow really engaged into that process, in the connection between the diaspora and the homeland. And definitely what I have seen and what I believe, it's to somehow give opportunities, give benefits to the diaspora, because we're small countries. It's clear that the business numbers are going to be absent over here, but the emotions, the stories that they were hearing about their homeland will keep them stay in the country itself. So again, it's a huge benefit, but also the diaspora should understand the goal of their homeland. The homeland should be clear, communicating about what are the goals of the country in the next phases. If the European Union is our goal, then we need to try to tell them really the problems, where are we stuck, so we can ask for clear solutions. Because diaspora people have its own problems. They have their own daily lives, their own jobs, and they cannot think on how they can contribute to the country on a daily level. But the country can be very clear in giving these opportunities and stating what they need, because that's the only way forward in order to get that accession process, whether it's EU or other processes in the world.
Yeah, I guess at the end also, to a strong degree, it comes down to that communication and that relationship between the two. Gentlemen, did you
One thing just
please
to add,
do.
it's again coming from the nation which has a very long history of assimilation as well. So because like we have many communities in Asia, in Africa, even as Armenians, but no Armenians live there. We have heritage left there. So I would say now for many nations which are now stepping in this, having diaspora phenomena, it's extremely important not only the message and understand the vision and identity which is based on the past, which is why to be Albanian or Macedonian or Bosnian or Armenian, but why to stay in future Armenian. So what does it give to people emotionally, but also rationally? And this is where definitely the states have, this exclusive right to develop the bigger picture. Not on their own, but with the diaspora. But they need to lead, because diaspora is very diverse. People live everywhere, as my colleague has said, and they will be unable to formulate that. They have a lot of potential, but they need a support, a guidance to structure it so that they can feel themselves longer term in future, even if they're not planning to come back to the country physically, but being with that country mentally, emotionally, and professionally.
And it goes to show how much of this is wrapped up in a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, and your emotional connection to a particular place. And I think that's something that's universal, that people across the world can relate to and can understand. And I think that's why this topic is so fascinating, because it really taps into the core of human emotion and the sense of belonging. Gentlemen, I must say it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it's been a really nice follow-up from the forum. Before we wrap up, perhaps I could ask you, as we sign off, what are the maybe key one or two things that you would like to see moving forward when it comes to policy, when it comes to strategy or action plans, with regards to your respective countries, with regards to engagements of diaspora? If there are maybe one or two key things where you think this is an absolute priority and I'd love to see this, it would be a game changer.
I would say I would like to see the institutionalization process of diaspora members to be successful in the upcoming years, and that trust to be re-established between our nation and diaspora members. Those are the two things that I will be working on. And last but not least is to learn our diaspora, to map out our diaspora so we can understand the potential fully. So tomorrow when something happens, we to act more in prevention rather in solving some problems.
I would add, just not to repeat what have been mentioned by two of us, I think it's extremely important to identify what is a success and what are the key KPIs to understand. Whatever we do, the governments, the policies they develop, what is the success? What is the dream? Like in business, everything is around success, right? In diaspora-related topics, everything is mostly about emotions and processes rather than the results and how we get there. So I think whatever strategies are developed, it's great to have a bigger picture, then assessment how to get there, then what's missing, including partnerships, and to develop all of that holistically with the diaspora being a co-owner of the process from, not even from the stage 0, but from the stage -1, before even the concept has been developed. I think this is crucial for most of the nations, and making diaspora co-owner of the process is extremely difficult, I must confess. It's not only dealing with traditional institutions, but now we have a lot of diasporans who are out of any community life, a part of networks, professionals, or even individuals. So how to identify them, how to get them back to the system somehow is a real challenge. But again, it comes only after you articulate the format and the key priorities, and you'll see that many diasporans will identify themselves.
Sure. And I would say one message to diaspora, people should be proud from where they come from. People should be proud from their identity. They should never lose their sense of belonging to their families, to their relatives. And by keeping that from a generation to generation, there will be one who will decide to go back and contribute again to the homeland.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.